Wait a second, why are there two Yugis?
I'm not sure, but sometimes when I'm dueling, it's like I can feel a powerful voice inside my head telling me how to win.
Does that mean you've been cheating?
Well, it's more complicated than that.
Sounds like cheating to me, Yug.
It's not cheating! It's more like we have a spiritual connection that goes far beyond any—
Hey, Big Yugi, has Little Yugi been cheating this whole time?
Oh, you guys can all just go straight to hell.
Know your place, worm. Prepare yourself. Damn Saiyan.
How did you get into Yu-Gi-Oh? Let me know in the comments section below.
Long ago, when the pyramids were still young, Egyptian kings played a game of great and terrible power. But these shadow games erupted into a war that threatened to destroy the entire world, until a brave and powerful pharaoh locked the magic away, imprisoning it within the mystical Millennium Items. Now, 5,000 years later, a boy named Yugi unlocks the secret of the Millennium Puzzle. He is infused with ancient magical energies, for destiny has chosen him to defend the world from the return of the Shadow Games, just as the brave pharaoh did 5,000 years ago.
So for the longest time, I thought that I had been a Dragon Ball fan since I was 10 years old, because that's as far back as I can remember. But seeing as how the Yu-Gi-Oh anime came out in 2000, at least in the US, I, at that point, was 10 years old and had already been an avid fan of Dragon Ball for many years, up to that point watching even all the way up to the Cell arc. So I learned something today. I have been a Dragon Ball fan since I was alive in the single digits, which is pretty awesome. But this isn't a story about how I became a Dragon Ball fan. No, this is a story about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Cucked Dragon Ball for me. This is essentially my first ever story time video. Like I was saying, I was an avid Dragon Ball fan for many years by the time the 2000s hit. I was very much into the Saiyan arc, Namek, Cell arc. I was caught up with all of that. Now this is a part of the story that I don't remember at all, but somehow, whether it was more than likely in a magazine, because I was really big into magazines back in the day, or a commercial, I had caught wind of a new card game coming out that had a bunch of anime monsters and you can play with your friends. Now, I didn't know it was going to become as big as it was, but at the time I had already been into the Pokemon trading card game, so I was looking for something new. And so I walked around the corner to Hollywood Video. And for those of you guys who don't remember Hollywood Video, it's basically just like Blockbuster, but it closed down a lot earlier. And I walked into this Hollywood Video and asked the guy at the counter, hey, do you know when you're going to be getting these new Yu-Gi-Oh cards? And he told me the new shipment was coming in the next day. So I walked back into Hollywood Video, and of course, there they were. They hadn't even sold one at that point because I had come extremely early as soon as the store opened up to get my packs. Now these were the Blue Eyes White Dragon packs. These were the original, the OG, the first ones, and I still have so much nostalgia for that cover art because I was so infatuated with the way Blue Eyes White Dragon looked, not only on that art, but just the way he looks like in general. I thought he looked extremely original for a dragon design, and back then I was just so into all that shit. So I opened up my first pack and I literally almost had a fucking heart attack because the first card that I saw in that first pack was the original Blue Eyes White Dragon, the one on the cover art. I couldn't believe my luck. I mean, this was the card that I wanted the most. I opened up the second and third pack, and there were a bunch of other cards in there, but nothing to the degree of that Blue Eyes White Dragon. And once I realized the heart of the cards was on my side, I felt that it was my mission to make this my new thing, my new Pokemon, and bring it to my playground and show everybody, which is what I ended up doing. I did bring it to the playground where everybody else was still hyped up over Pokemon cards, and I showed them my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and some people were interested. A lot of them really were like, nah, you know, passing on it, and I was like, whatever. I love this. This is phenomenal, and I found a few people to play with who had actually gotten some of the cards as well, and we had a lot of fun playing the game wrong, because at that time there was no rules, there was nothing. We didn't even have full decks. We just had whatever cards we had gotten from the packs at the time. There were no booster packs, nothing like that. Oh, those were the simpler times. But they wouldn't last, because right after that, the Yu-Gi-Oh anime dropped, and I was there, I'm assuming it was Saturday morning, with my bowl of Lucky Charms watching the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! And as the episodes kept coming out, I was introduced to Exodia, to Seto Kaiba, which became my favorite character because, again, I love the Blue Eyes White Dragons, and he had 3 of them and ripped up the 4th one. So this guy was a badass to me, and the whole Duelist Kingdom arc, that became such an integral part of my childhood that I would put it on the same ranking as when I first watched Dragon Ball Z. I was hooked on it. And so for many years, my passion for Dragon Ball completely switched to Yu-Gi-Oh! And of course, I watched the Buu Saga when it first came out, and I was still an avid fan of Dragon Ball, but by that time, I was so hyped up into the new thing, and that was Yu-Gi-Oh! Plus, I thought that the Buu Saga was weaker than the rest of the sagas, so I was kind of falling off of the Dragon Ball train. Plus, as soon as Dragon Ball finished, and I remember watching that ending episode, Dragon Ball GT came right after, and that is a story for a different time. Because the level of disappointment after hearing the English intro for Dragon Ball GT, I can't begin to even gather my thoughts in this video. I need to think about it for a future video. But again, back to Yu-Gi-Oh! I had Yu-Gi-Oh! Shirts, Yu-Gi-Oh! Backpacks, Yu-Gi-Oh! Lunch boxes. At that point, the booster packs came out. Of course, the first one I got was a Seto Kaiba one. Then I got the Yugi. I got so many of them. I had so many cards, and I was making my decks. At the time, we were still playing by the rules from the show, even though the rules from the show made no sense, but I was still really into the show, so me and my buddies were still going by what they were saying and what they were doing. And I remember once the Battle City tournament came out, everybody was trying to get those dual discs that they had in the show. They were selling them at Toys R Us, and I knew a couple of people that actually had them. I remember that my mom had this camera. It was one of those old cameras that came in a little leather pouch, and she was using it on and off all the time, so I decided to take the pouch. It was a little leather pouch. You could wear it around your belt, and what I did was that's where I had my deck. So I walked around town ready to duel anybody at any time with my deck right on my hip. One of my best friends at the time, he had a pool table in his basement, and we used to use that pool table not for its intended purpose. We used to use it for duels. I remember it was the 5th grade, 6th grade, around that time, and dueling was such a big thing at my school that everybody was doing it. After school, people would stay there in the cafeteria just dueling, and this is where I not only learned a lot of techniques, but also got my first heartbreak with the game, because I had left my original deck on one of the lunch tables because I wanted to go get a drink of water from the water fountain. By the time I got back to the table, and remember, I was actually playing at the table, the dude that I was playing was gone, and my deck was gone. I was completely devastated. All my monsters were gone. My original Blue Eyes White Dragon, which at that point I had 2 of them, plus the one from the Seto Kaiba booster pack. I didn't have my Dark Magician anymore, and one of the cards that I really liked a lot was Catapult Turtle, and he was in that deck and he was gone, so I had to start over and it sucked. And I had to beg my mom to buy me another booster pack just so I could play, and then buy little packs here and there until eventually I had a decent deck, but it never was as good or as glorious as that original deck. This passion for Yu-Gi-Oh! Took me away from Dragon Ball for a long ass time. And just when it started to die down, when I started to get out of the game, a brand new Yu-Gi-Oh! Show dropped on YouTube in YouTube's infancy, and that is
Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged! We're about half as popular as Team 4-Star.
My company has taken control of the entire city in order to host a card game tournament, putting several hundred people out of business in the process. For those of you who don't know the rules to Duel Monsters, I shall now explain them to you in detail. You start off by shuffling your deck.
Boring.
Who said that? Who the f*** said that? I'm warning you, I'm not going to start this tournament until somebody owns up. Now who said it?
Sorry, that was me. My bad.
Get the hell out of my city. Good. Moving right along.
Bro, at the time, YouTube was just starting out, so there really wasn't that many things to watch on there, but I remember my buddy, he showed me some clips from the Abridged series, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series, and I finally found the actual episodes, and I think they were up to episode 5 at the time. And so, even though I was phasing out of Yu-Gi-Oh!, for me, Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged was Yu-Gi-Oh!'s last hurrah in my lifetime. All in all, guys, I never stopped being a fan of Dragon Ball. I was a fan of Dragon Ball for the entirety of my life since I watched it, and that's the reason I decided to make a Dragon Ball YouTube channel, because that's the one thing that has been a constant in my life that I knew I was never gonna not have a passion for. But for at least 7 years, Yu-Gi-Oh! Took the place of Dragon Ball. This is going to be BlackScape, signing off. Take care, guys.